Welcome everyone who's joining us this afternoon. It is so wonderful to have all of you here to talk with my colleague Tom and I today about 4 keys to writing an impactful college essay. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started with the main content. We do have closed captioning available for this webinar, so if any of you do need that, you are welcome to access it. You will have an opportunity to submit questions through the Q&A function as well. Tom and I will be addressing all questions at the end of the webinar, but feel free to add them to the Q&A whenever you think of them so that you don't forget your question. All of the videos that we're doing this week will be archived on our website, including this one. So feel free to look back on our website if you miss any part of it or if you would like to rewatch what we're doing today. And then we also have one more webinar scheduled for tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And that one will be all about the college application process and how admission counselors read applications and make decisions. So you definitely won't want to miss that either. And then we'll go ahead and get started. As I said, my name is Olivia. This is my colleague Tom, who will be helping us out as well. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the content.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Olivia. And thanks for joining us today. I appreciate everyone giving me a reason to put on a shirt and tie. Feels like a pre-pandemic ritual coming back into focus. But we'll get the conversation started and frame this topic with a quick question. And that is, why do colleges require an essay in the first place? This big talked about personal essay. And from our perspective as counselors, myself, Olivia, and all of our colleagues, we're really looking to answer 2 main questions when we're reading college essays. The first is, how well does this applicant write? And then the second is going to be, what more can I learn about this applicant that I haven't already seen in their application? And just to give you a sense of the order of how we operate at Holy Cross, this is different from college to college, but the college essay is the last thing that we read on your application. So we will have gone through your school profile, your transcript, your letters of recommendation, maybe your test scores if you decide to send those along, all of the different ways that you've engaged with Holy Cross, including a session like this today, your extracurricular activities, and then your essay is actually the final piece that we read. And that is not an indication that it's the least important piece by any means, but it is really your chance to communicate your last thoughts to us. So before we finish reading your application and write down what we call our bottom line, which is kind of our main takeaway from your college application, this is the last thing that we're touching on. So it's a great way to think about, what quality am I hoping to highlight in myself? What message am I looking to communicate to my application reader? And between Olivia and myself, just doing some quick mental math on the years that we've been in the profession, I would venture to guess that we've read about 10,000 college essays between ourselves. And as our admission staff, I would venture to guess about 100,000 essays amongst the entire staff. So kind of going off of Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours rule, we've put together 4 keys for students' college essays. So we're eager to share these with you, and we hope that for the audience, this just gives you a sense of how to handle this process, how to knock it out of the park, and you know, how to best communicate in your college essay to the college what it is that you're hoping to convey. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to my colleague Olivia, who will start us off with our first key to writing a good college essay.
Awesome, thanks, Tom. Key number 1 is going to back us all the way up to this coming summer between your junior and senior year of high school. And key number 1 is start early. And I imagine that many of you have plenty of people in your lives that are telling you to start your applications and start your essays early. But we're just going to reiterate that for you because it is incredibly important to writing a really successful and impactful essay. You want to give yourself time to explore different themes and ideas that you might be interested in writing about. Make sure that you brainstorm early and often. You can always have a little writing session with yourself at the beginning of summer around some different themes or ideas that you're considering for your essay. And then just leave it for a month or so and then come back to it later in the summer and see if anything still sticks with you or if you're thinking about something new. So the more brainstorming you do and the more ideas you generate about what you may want to write about, the more choices that you'll have to find an idea that's really going to work for you. And then that being said, we want you to draft multiple ideas as well. It's really important to give yourself an opportunity to kind of flesh out those different ideas that you have. So, you might be thinking about writing about an experience that you've had over the summer or an experience that you had as a young child, or you might want to write about the major that you're interested in. So it's a really good idea to draft a couple of those different ideas and just see where they take you, see where your writing goes. And one useful thing that you can do with these as well is use them for other essays. A lot of colleges will require supplemental essays or will ask for additional information that you may want to provide on your application. So if you have ideas that you like, but that you don't think fit as your general personal statement college essay, those could be really good topics to use for a supplemental essay, or just to add for additional information is something that you would like to include in your application. And the more ideas you have, the easier it will be to find these different pieces of who you are and what you've experienced that you want to share with admissions offices. And then finally, this reduces your stress. I imagine that many of you are super stressed out right now, trying to finish junior year of high school, trying to prepare for senior year, trying to look at colleges, figure out whether or not you can visit, attending virtual programming like this. There's a lot going on in your life. And so the earlier you can start, the more time you give yourself, the easier it will be to just get this done, right? It gives you time to write, rewrite, revise, and just get done with it. So that by the time the fall semester of your senior year comes around and you're starting to apply to colleges, you'll already have this in the bag and you can just add it to your application and check it off and make it really simple for yourself. Now we're going to throw it back to Tom for key number 2. Tom, you're still muted.
Thanks so much. I thought that would never happen to me, but here we are. So we have this notion of start early, and I think that's a good starting point. But before really thinking about brainstorming ideas or putting pen to paper or starting to type your essay, we think the next important step is to think about your audience, to know your audience. And we talk in our office just about the fact that students in high school, they're used to writing for an audience that they know. They know their English teacher, they know their history teacher. So you kind of get feedback on essays over the course of the year, and you can adjust to their expectations of you and what it is that they're looking for you. But maybe Olivia and I now, but most admission officers might be opaque to you. You might not exactly know who they are and what it is that they're looking for. So there's this fear of the unknown reader. And what we're hoping to communicate to you is that you are your own best audience. So if you're trying to figure out, what is the message that I'm trying to get across and who is it that I'm trying to communicate this to, we ask you just to take a good hard look in the mirror. We as admission counselors are human beings just like you. I've joked with colleagues that, these popular topics, things that we all share in common and like, for instance, food and dogs, these are essay topics that admission officers are probably going to enjoy as well. So your audience doesn't have to be this great unknown. You don't have to think about what it is that Olivia or I or any of the Holy Cross admission officers are hoping to read. You're really, if you enjoy, writing your essay, we're definitely going to enjoy reading it. Because at the end of the day, the majority of the application is not, all that enjoyable per se. Sifting through transcripts and looking at test scores and all of these things, that's not the fun part of reading an application. It's the essay that really brings an application to life, that infuses this life and color into an application. So, as you're considering your audience, you also want to make sure that you're keeping this personal statement on your common application broad. So this doesn't happen all that often, but every once in a while we will see a student who goes out of their way to mention a specific college that it is that they're applying to. So we advise students just so that you don't make that mistake and end up sending the the XYZ University essay to Holy Cross, which bums us out, that you keep it broad and general, and that you keep this a common essay. So like I said before, putting pen to paper, starting to type or brainstorm ideas, considering who your audience is, and you yourself are your own best audience. So that's the advice that we have for you. Don't worry so much about conventional wisdom or what it is that you think you want us for you to write. But really, if you're enjoying the process of writing your essay, and it's a fun process for you, it'll be a fun read for us as well. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Olivia for key number 3.
Key number 3 is one that I imagine a lot of you are looking for some guidance on, considering your topic. And this may be a little bit different than the advice that you think you're going to get, because as Tom has already said, it is not that as important, what you think we want you to write about as much as what you want to write about, right? The actual topic that you choose for your essay matters a lot less than how you feel about that topic. So if you're only picking a topic because your teacher or your mom or your guidance counselor said, this is the topic that you should write about, then it might not be that interesting of an essay, because if you have no passion or energy behind what you're writing, it becomes a lot more difficult for us to feel that too. So as part of our advice is to really have fun and get engaged with your essay that you're writing. If you are bored while writing your essay, we will probably be bored while reading it. If you are having fun while you're writing your essay, or you feel excited or intrigued by your essay, then we will probably feel that too when we're reading it later on. So that's something to keep in mind, is that your topic can range from honestly pretty much anything in the world. And there's nothing that we would say that is, this is our favorite topic, this is the topic that always produces the best essays. Because the best essays are not produced by a single topic, they're produced by the energy and excitement that you bring to the topic of your choice. That being said, a couple of things that you may want to avoid in general that can be really helpful for you as you're deciding what your topic should be. For one, the bathroom. You wouldn't believe the number of essays that we've read that have involved being in the shower or popping pimples in the mirror or something like that. It's not maybe the best place to start a college essay. So my recommendation would be to avoid anything that involves the bathroom if you can possibly help it. The second piece of advice is try to avoid writing entirely about someone else. We see this frequently with students who have a really strong connection to a family member or a teacher or a mentor or someone in your life that is interesting and inspiring to you. Certainly you are welcome to incorporate them into your essay, but I would caution you just not to write the entire essay about them. Because if your whole essay is about your grandfather and his life and how he became who he is, we learn a lot about your grandfather, but we don't learn a lot about you. And the goal is to learn about you. So feel free to incorporate other people into your essay, but just make sure that the ultimate focus is on you and your life. Third thing that you may want to avoid is profanity, unless it is absolutely necessary for the telling of your story. You never know who is going to be reading your essay. Some admission counselors may not really care about reading essays with profanity in it. To some, it may matter a lot. It may depend on the college that you're looking to apply to. A lot of religious or more conservative colleges may have a stronger aversion to profanity than others. So it's just something to keep in mind, again, with the know your audience idea. So try to avoid that if at all possible as well. And then the last one I would recommend, try to avoid repeating your resume or your activities list. This is another really common pitfall that we see with students, where their essay is basically just listing all of the activities they've been involved with, or awards that they've won, or classes that they've taken. But that's all information that is available to us at other parts of your application. So that's why we have a transcript. That's why we have an activities list. That's why we have letters of recommendation. So the best thing that you can do with your essay is to try to provide information that does not appear anywhere else in your application. And then the last and biggest piece of advice that I have for you about topic is that every great essay has two levels. There's the surface level, which is the object, place, person, experience that you're writing about. And then there's a deeper level, which is why this matters and what it says about you. So a good essay on a topic that might be as simple as a to-do list. I read an essay this year about a girl who loves to-do lists. So that is kind of the basic topic of her essay, the object of her essay. But the deeper level of that essay was, why does this matter to her, right? That she loves writing to-do lists because it helps keep her organized. And she's the type of person who feels confident and comfortable when she can feel organized in her work or her schoolwork or her activities. And so it tells us something about who she is, what she cares about, and how she spends her time. So that's something that's really important to keep in mind no matter what topic you choose, that there should always be a surface idea that's kind of the focus of your essay, but also a deeper meaning behind that, and something that connects back to you and who you are, because that's ultimately what we want to know when we read your essay. For our last key, we'll toss it back over to Tom.
Just to follow up on what you said, Olivia, I've never thought about it so succinctly, but those are definitely my favorite essays, are with those metaphorical connections where a student, an applicant, starts with something that I'm at first intrigued by and interested in how they're going to tie it all together. And then when they, bring it home and talk about how that object, experience, person connects to them, those are the essays that are impactful, that make me feel something and have a better sense of who this person is and what it is that they value. So this last piece, this fourth key, is a little bit of a mouthful for me to say. I think proofread, proofread, proofread. I don't think I could say that 5 times, but ultimately, your essay is a writing sample. So the language that you use matters. As we started off with the question that, the 2 questions that admission officers are trying to answer, what new information can I learn about this person? I think we've hopefully covered that for you with some of the first keys, but this proofreading step here is about writing ability. So, starting early will help out with this. It's not a night before thing where you're rushing before the deadline. You're going to have time to look this over and to make sure that it is your best possible writing sample. One common mistake that we do see among students, and it's not going to sink in application per se, but we really advise you to put down the thesaurus and avoid the synonym button at all costs. The best essay that you can write is going to be the essay that you write in your own words. So while sometimes, these big flashy words sound smart and might look appealing, it's going to oftentimes end up coming off like you're trying to speak really academically and intellectually and like a professor. But if you just write in the words that you use on a day-to-day basis and that you write with for high school essays, that's going to be your best possible product and is going to be more of an authentic writing sample as well. We also just want to, advise you to double check some of the little things as well, to have a sense that and look out for the fact that spell check, while a great tool, it does not catch everything. Each year we see correctly spelled words with the incorrect meaning in context. So a favorite from last year, which certainly made us chuckle, was a student that wanted to talk about an anti-bullying club that they belonged to. And small typo, they ended up typing ant bullying club. So as opposed to being someone that was anti-bullying, we were then picturing this student stomping around on ant hills, which wasn't the message that they were looking to convey, and certainly wasn't the end of the world. But just being sure that you're looking closely, not just at red lines under words, but also the meaning of words and what it is that you're hoping to convey. You are going to, as we all know, if you read something over again and again, it might all start to blend together and you're not critically thinking. So one piece of advice is that you read your essay aloud. This kind of goes back to looking in the mirror, but reading something aloud definitely allows those words to come to life, and you're going to hear some nuances there as far as the message that you're trying to convey. So that's certainly one tip. And also just being cognizant of the fact that most students write their essay in a Word document and then have to end up copying and pasting those words, those 650 words, which is the limit of how long a college essay can be on the Common App, directly into the application. And sometimes the format gets a little bit messed up. So there is a tool on the Common application to be aware of that is PDF preview. So that will give you the sense of what your essay is going to look like when it comes through. It's ideal to have those paragraph breaks built in that you surely had on your Word document. When we just see an essay as a block of text, it's a bit of an eyesore and might not allow for those pauses in thoughts and those changes in themes that we typically look for. So those are a couple of the little things that we advise that you look for, just knowing, all right, spell check is going to help me, but not solve all of my problems. My format is something to be cognizant of, and reading aloud. And our final piece of advice here on proofreading is just about bringing in a couple of other people as well. You definitely don't want to blast this out to 20 different proofreaders who are all going to have different ideas, and that will just muddy the waters. But to bring in at least one reader who knows you well, who can speak to your character and the message that you're trying to get across, like parents, friends, or siblings, to name a few examples. And then another good example of a desired proofreader would be those who have perspective on the college admission process, like your guidance counselor, like a teacher. So I think the more and more that you end up reworking an essay, sometimes the essence and the authenticity of your writing can get lost. But by reading your essay aloud to yourself first, and then bringing in parent, guardian, friends, siblings who you feel like know you well as maybe one teacher or guidance counselor who can say, this is a product that a college admission office will like. We think that these are real keys to success in terms of rounding out your college app or your college essay and making sure that it's the best writing sample that you can put forth. So those are the keys that we have for you today. In sum, as a summary, we advise you, to start early, to start thinking about your essay topic now or this summer, to consider your audience and knowing that the best audience is yourself. You are your own best critic, and you know who you are and the message that you're trying to get across, and not worrying so much, although it might seem counterintuitive, not worrying so much about individuals like Olivia and myself, because we will like the essay that you like. Certainly considering your topic and giving a good amount of thought to that surface level meaning that Olivia was talking about and that deeper meaning that you're hoping to convey. And then finally, making sure that you give yourself time to proofread and make this as much of a polished and perfect product as you can pass along in 650 words. So we do have some questions that have been submitted along the way, and looking forward to kind of handling these and taking these on. Our goal with these sessions is to keep it to about a Netflix sitcom special. So we want to keep it to about 25 to 30 minutes. So hopefully we'll be able to tackle these questions in a few minutes. So we'll just kind of go in order in terms of the questions that we've got. And Olivia and I can take turns on answering ones that stand out to us. But first one that we got, is it okay to write your essay about one of the activities listed on your application, or would we prefer a topic not mentioned elsewhere in the application? So I think, this is a bit of a balancing act. As Olivia mentioned, regurgitating your life in your resume is not the ultimate goal here. There's just not enough space to communicate your entire life and high school experience. But it's also understandable that the things that you're involved in are major parts of your life as well. So I think trying to do too much with your essay and write about 5 different activities, probably not the best idea. But if there is one that's been, really transformational for you, that's, you don't have to avoid that per se. Once again, the topic that's most important to you is the topic that you're going to write about best. So that certainly can be something that you're involved in and that shows up elsewhere on your application, as long as it has that nuance and says something about you and kind of has that strong conclusion to it.
I will say the difference with that is whether you're writing a list of things that you've participated in versus focusing on one or two things that are important to you. So what we're advising is to avoid just listing everything that you've done, because that's already been done. But it's certainly, if you want to elaborate on a sports team that you're part of, or a musical that you are in, or a volunteer experience that you had, feel free to do so. Absolutely.
I also liked this question, just about when constructing your essay, do you recommend formulating a detailed outline, or going right to writing drafts and see how the writing process goes? I think that totally depends on who you are as a person and how your brain works and how you usually write. So I would kind of go to how you typically go about crafting an essay. I'm definitely the kind of writer that likes to do the word dump and get all my ideas out on the page and start to craft from there. I don't, start with a conclusion and finish, or start with an introduction and finish with my conclusion. It's more of a molding process, but I think that kind of depends on who you are and how you formulate your ideas. So I'll leave that up to you, but I think that's a thoughtful question.
One of the pieces of advice I frequently give to students during essay workshops as well is that when you're writing your first draft of your essay, oftentimes the best sentence to start your essay with appears somewhere in the middle. So it might be the second paragraph that you write or the third paragraph that you write, because a lot of times when you're brainstorming, you have a lot of exposition where you're trying to explain what you're doing and how you're getting to the point, and you finally get to the point about the second or third paragraph in. So one of the pieces of advice I often give is to look for that sentence that really stands out, or ask someone else to look for it for you, and then move that to the top of your essay and go on from there. That's a really great way to have a kind of a grabbing sentence right at the beginning that says, this is what my essay is about. One of the questions that I would really like to answer here is, is it okay for to write your essay about something not particularly impressive or something that's normal, that might sound mundane? Absolutely, please do that. A lot of prospective students run into the problem of thinking that because I haven't dealt with a significant hardship, or I haven't gone through trauma or loss, I don't have anything useful to write about in my application essay. And that is completely false. Your application essay can really be about anything. As I mentioned, one of my favorite essays that I read this year was about to-do lists. I don't know how much more mundane you can get than writing a to-do list. So there are so many ways to incorporate a really fun essay that is on a simple topic. And I want all of you to know, please, that you do not need to have a sad story or a scary story, or something that, like, something horrible that has happened to you in your life in order to write a good college essay. There are a lot of ways to write a good college essay that do not necessarily involve that particular topic.
Also, on the flip side of that too, don't feel like you have to have some crowning achievement or a championship win or a research project completed. I think oftentimes the mundane details of life are the ones that are most interesting. And it just does not have to be profound. While it can be, I think it ultimately comes down to execution and writing. So there can be great essays about all sorts of different kinds of things. And I see another question that came along that is kind of along the same line. So just want to make sure that we address that. Is it better for an essay to be about a small moment or a broad topic? There's no bad topic. There's no bad topic choice. We really mean that sincerely. So it is just kind of about execution and how it is that you feel about that topic.
We also have one asking about writing different college essays for each college, if there's something specific that you want to convey to different colleges. Absolutely, that's something that you can do. Just make sure that when you are submitting those essays, that you're submitting the correct essay to the correct college. That is something that we oftentimes see, is where a student will submit an essay to us and it has, like we said, a name of a different college that is not College of the Holy Cross. But absolutely, if you have a different essay that you want to submit based on the program you're applying for or something like that, you just want to be extra cautious that you are always submitting the correct essay to the correct college. And I will say too, with a lot of selective colleges, there are oftentimes supplemental essays that fill this void for you. So you may have a general personal statement that you submit, but then often a lot of colleges have a supplemental essay that says, why our college? And that is a great place to specifically detail what it is about that college or a program that you're really excited about. So that's something else you can look into as well once you know which colleges you're going to apply to and what they require.
I really like this question that we got about proofreaders, one that I haven't necessarily thought all that much about in the past, so it kind of jogs my mind. But thoughts on how to handle feedback that you receive from proofreaders who you do not necessarily agree with. That's a really good one. And, I guess it kind of depends on who it is that it's coming from. If it's your guidance counselor or teacher, I would maybe, ask some follow-up questions as to the why that they're giving you that advice. Why don't you think this topic is what is one that I should run with, or why do you think that I should change my paragraphs around? But you're ultimately, controlling your own application and destiny here. So your own stylistic choices and topic choices are your own. And I think you can feel confident and you can own that. If it's, someone that just knows you well, like we were talking about, friends, family, I would just, take this advice into consideration, but it is absolutely not your obligation to please everyone in your college essay writing process. This is your own authentic product, and you should feel like you have the ability to pick and choose what it is that you want to go with, but not feel forced in any way to say, I have my proofreader, I have to go with exactly what it is that they told me, because you probably do know best as far as what it is that you're hoping to convey.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking every advice with a grain of salt is important, because you know the essay that you want to write, and it's quite possible that the people that are proofreading with you have some really good advice to share. But if something doesn't feel right to you, then you definitely don't need to incorporate it if you think that your essay is better said in another way. Another question that I thought would be really helpful for everyone is some tips to facilitate the brainstorming process. We talked a lot about brainstorming, and I know a lot of times it can be hard to figure out where to start. You sit down with a pen and paper and you're stuck. There are a lot of great resources online, so I definitely recommend all of you, if you're stuck with something, just Google college essay brainstorming, and there are so many resources out there with specific questions and prompts that you can think about. Another really good way is to just go to the Common Application as well. The Common Application has usually 6 to 8 different prompts that you can choose from to write your essay. So that's a great place to start also, is to look at the different prompts and see if any of them stand out to you. And if they do, what comes to mind to answer this specific prompt. Another thing that can be really helpful is to just kind of, if you're thinking about writing about an activity or experience that you've had, is to make yourself a list. Because that will prove useful for your application process later anyway, since you'll want to list all of your activities on your application for college. So if you go ahead and just make a whole list of all the activities or experiences that you've been involved with over the years, gather all that information in one place, it can be easier to search for something and say, oh, I remember this particular experience that I had when I was volunteering with this organization, and that might be a good thing to write about. Or, oh, I remember this awesome feeling that I had when I joined the soccer team, and I want to write about that. So those are some things that you can use to brainstorm as well.
And I'll just play a bit of devil's advocate here. I think, if you are stuck and you are just looking to solicit some help with brainstorming, I do think, going to the Common Application or Coalition Application list of topics might be a good place just to gain some inspiration, but definitely don't feel boxed in by those topics, because you should know that the last topic that you're allowed to write about is, please write about anything that you would like to write about. So it can be super open-ended. You can choose that topic. And I saw another question just about, should I write the essay or the title first? We typically don't see titles on college essays. So maybe that's a little bit of a sigh of relief. I think that was always one of the hardest things for me writing essays is, what alliterative title can I come up with here? You can take that off of your plate and just write freely, and your introduction is your title in some ways. So while maybe you'll get some inspiration from the list of topics, don't feel like you have to necessarily write about, a challenge or an accomplishment or whatever the topics are in any given year. You can just choose that free write. And I think oftentimes those are the best essays. And I will say too, as a counselor, I never look to see on the Common Application what topic that a student selected and then how well they answer that question. That's not part of the calculation on our end. I just dive right into the essay. So the topic that you choose or the question that you answer is less important to me than what you write about and how you write it. I think those are both recurring themes here today.
Yeah, I will second that with Tom. I never read what topic it is that a student has chosen. I only read the essay because the topic ultimately doesn't matter to me as much as the essay that you've written. The last two questions that we have here that we haven't answered yet are about topic again, which I know is a really big question for a lot of you. Are there example topics that have really stood out in the past? Or are there topics that we see over and over again that we would advise not to write about? I would caution to say anything in particular with regard to these questions, again, because for both of us, we're very insistent that you need to pick a topic that speaks to you. And that is really, really important to me. And I know it's important to Tom as well, that we don't box you in with things that we've read or things that we've liked or not liked, because ultimately, oftentimes when we like or don't like an essay, it has much more to do with how the essay was written than what the essay was written about. So I think that's important to note as well. And I don't know if you have any other feedback that you'd like to provide, Tom.
No, I think that's a good way to end it. It is telling that part of our presentation is choose the topic that you want, and then we do get a lot of questions about topic, just from the audience, and it's totally understandable. It is a big question, but our real piece of advice, the key is to run and write about the topic that you want to write about. So we hope that this gives you carte blanche to choose what it is that you want to write about. We've enjoyed spending this virtual time with you here today, and we're really looking forward to reading the essays that you'll submit, hopefully to Holy Cross moving forward. So I think we've overstepped the sitcom episode time on Netflix. We're approaching a full drama. So I think we'll end it there. But thanks so much for your time. This will be archived once again on our website. And we will also have a session tomorrow about how admission counselors read college applications for anyone that's available and interested. So thanks so much for your time, and look forward to reading your essays.